howdy, all you collector car fans out there. This is once again Jason, the owner and founder of Southern Bush Motorsports. So this is very exciting for us here at Southern Bush Motorsports. This is the first user or sort of subscriber submitted story. It's nothing super fancy car or rare, but it was an actual subscriber that took me up on my, if you've got a great story about a car you had and you got some pictures, send me the pictures, send me the story. I'll make a tales from the bush out of it and, let people hear your great stories from your past. This fella here had bought this car. This fella's name was Jerry. He had bought this car in 1998 and had a 327, and he picked it up from a guy in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and he helped him out with his farm truck, and the old truck that he had right there, and he showed up with this Impala, and for roughly 15 years he tried to get this thing. Like some of us try to get these cars and we can't get them, but eventually he got a call 15 years later, and he was able to pick up the car for $500. The whole front end of the car had already been taken off, but this is what it looked like after it was washed. He brought it back and he did a bunch of work to it and stuff, and he picked up some parts for it and all that, and realized, it was just a little bit too much for him, even though it was a dream car, so he had to give up on it. But, it's one of those cars that you wish you just would have never have let go of. But don't worry, Jerry, it happens to all of us, and I really appreciate you sending in your pictures and your stories. And just for everybody else, if you got a cool tale from when you were a kid or just recently, whenever it was, and you found a cool car and you want to send some pictures in to me and a tale, some story for it, we'll make a tale out of a bush for you. And starting to get into getting some t-shirts screen printed, so might even have a t-shirt for you. We'll have to see how things go. That sure is a sweet ride. I wish you would have been able to keep that one. This one right here, I'm gonna add a little bit of stuff to it to make it a good video. That right there is a 1932 Confederate Roadster. General Motors said they did not build that car, and to be honest, they were a little pissed when I surfaced it. It was sitting in a private collection. This car was actually sitting in a collection with the 1969 Playmate of the Year Mustang, pink Mustang convertible. I'm going to try to find some pictures of that later, but this car was a restored car. It had been restored probably 40 years ago, but it had been sitting in this building ever since. And I tried to do some research on why they were a little upset that I surfaced this car, but it is what it is. From what I understand, they said they didn't build a Confederate Roadster, but there it is, 1932 Confederate Roadster convertible right there. And boy, that car had some history to it. I wish I would have been able to keep some of the pictures from where they found this car, but it was in a rough place. Now, this old Southern boy that had these cars, he was a typical Southern boy. He was a little cautious about pulling cars out, but this was the first one that he let me pull out. Now, I was going to stick this on my website to sell it, but I thought I wanted the world to get a look at this car, so being a little bit new in the business back then, I stuck it on eBay Motors, and that turned out to be the nemesis of what I shouldn't have done, because that raised a lot of attention. But incredibly enough, 2 hours after I posted it, the car was sold. The guy that bought the car said he needed it to finish his collection. He'd been looking for this car for 25 years. He knew the car existed. He kind of thought he knew where it was, but when I told him that it was in Charleston, South Carolina, he was like, "That's impossible. That car was in Georgia. It's old." I'm like, "No, here's all the numbers on it." And he was like, "Yeah, no, that's the car." So 2 hours after I listed it on eBay Motors, I sold it. And the next week was just heck, because it was just executives from here, executives from there, calling me saying, "Where'd the car go? We want it back," and blah, blah. And I'm like, y'all had all this time to figure out where it was, and he didn't. And sorry that I found it, but it is what it is. The car is sold, and I'm not going to tell you where it went, because that's just not the way it works. So that was an interesting little purchase and find right there, and selling the car. It was kind of crazy. I got a Firebird convertible that a guy had sent in pictures of and said they want the car. Now, when I tell you how much he wants for this car, I'm going to tell you at the end. So let's keep in mind that this guy sent me these pictures. I'm looking at the cars right there. I ended up picking this car up. I think this was 2006, 2007. Now, that was an unrestored Firebird. The guy had stuck rims on it, but he had bought that car in high school, him and his brother, and they drove it. That's the original top, the original paint. He stuck some rims on it, but this was a Southern car. It never left the South. Now, just because these cars come from the South does not mean they don't rust. The only problem with cars that come from the deep south in South Carolina is that you're so close to the ocean, the salt water can do a lot of what I call paint damage. It gets on the top of this paint and it burns it out pretty quick. Luckily, these guys really love this car and they kept it garage based or covered its entire life. So it was pretty cool to see a car that was untouched like this, and it was a pretty straight car. It ran good. I drove the car around. Like I said, I believe I ended up picking up this car for myself, drove it around for a little bit, and then I ended up selling it. But they loved the car. They took care of it, and as you can see, it's in pretty darn good shape. Looks like that quarter might be a little bit topped up on there, a little bit of rust on it right there. But look at how straight that car is. You really just, it's kind of tough to find them that complete and that straight and that untouched. But either way, it's a Firebird convertible. It's a pretty sweet looking car, and I enjoyed having the car, that's for sure. But the really cool thing about this car is that they hadn't done anything to it. They hadn't messed around with it at all. Everything worked on the car. I think the top, it was a manual top. It wasn't a power top. That kind of surprised me a little bit. But back to sending in your stories and stuff. It doesn't matter. I mean, you saw that story in the beginning. That was no SS or convertible or Yenko or anything like that. It was just a guy that had a story about a car that he really liked, and he ended up losing it. And I appreciate that, Jerry, for sending that in. But I'll take all stories and all pictures, and we'll get some tales done of subscriber cars or people that watch the channel. We'll get some stuff done of your cars. I'd be happy to do it. I just can't believe how untouched this car was. So I'm gonna reveal it now. This guy wanted $5,500 for this car. Now this was 2006, still not that long ago. $5,500. Now, I mean, do I knock myself in the head for getting rid of this car? I think I sold it for $8,500. About 6 months later, sold it on eBay, and if I remember right, the car went to Michigan. But it was a pretty sweet car, pretty clean, nothing fancy. I think it was just I believe it was just a small V8 in there. It was just a 350 or something like that. But, good driver. This is what we like to call a driver quality car. In my opinion, I wouldn't take this car apart and do a nut and bolt restoration on it, because you're never going to get your money out of it. But I sure would take this thing on a Friday night and cruise around in it, because it's a pretty sweet car. As you can see there, nice and straight, nice and solid. But that's the moral of the story. I wish I wouldn't have let that one go, because I only paid $5,500 for that car, and it's worth a lot more money now, but it was fun to drive. There you go. There's the engine right there. It's just a small V8. It had a nice, good-sized carburetor on it. Engine bay was nice and clean, and everything worked the way it was supposed to work. Wasn't an AC car or anything like that, but the car was really, really complete, and it was untouched, and that's what I liked about it. You can tell the motor hasn't been out of that engine bay. You take those motors out, you bang something. You know how caring much you take about being careful about taking the engine out. You're gonna bang something, and it just is what it is. Even if you're careful, you're gonna pump something, and you can usually tell when a motor's been taken out of a car. Look at that interior, and that for an original interior, that's still pretty clean. A little rough looking, but it's original, and that's the cool part about it. That interior is good enough that I'd just ride and drive. I wouldn't do anything to that car. You put any money in or anything. I mean, that's just my opinion. It's clean enough, and I could deal with it. It's a pretty straight looking car, and it'd be a great driver for anybody on a Sunday afternoon. You're gonna get looks like you wouldn't believe in that car, especially with it being a convertible. Had the cover on the top right there. Like I said, it was a manual top, which kind of stinks. They weren't all power tops back then, but it was what it was. You just got out of the car and put the top down and put it up. It was a fun car to have, and well, I tell you get a lot of looks when you're driving around in a convertible like that. And those small Chevrolet motors had a bit of a punch to them, and you definitely light the tires up in it. It had a great little sound to it. Definitely could get some attention when you're driving around town. But solid underneath that car, and you can tell that car's never been taken apart. Look at that thing, man. That's super, super solid. That's a good Southern car right there. Those Southern cars didn't have a lot of rust in them unless they ended up sitting on the ground. Because in the deep south, they got those fire ants, and those fire ants have a lot of acidity to them when they start building up nests and stuff in cars, and it can get pretty ugly pretty quick. I had found a 57 Chevy Bel Air convertible that was completely untouched, had been sitting in the deep south and sitting on the ground. I went to pull that car up, and the whole underside of the car came out. So definitely not nice. It had a few issues right there, but You know, I appreciate you coming by and checking out our Tales from the Bush, and don't forget to send in your stories and your pictures, and let's get a Tales from the Bush done for you too. You know, I appreciate you, Jerry, for sending in this story, and don't forget to come back and check out more tales. Thank you from Jason from Southern Bush Motorsports.